Mildred was crying alone at her birthday table when a 6-year-old girl climbed onto the chair beside her. "Don't cry, Grandma. I'm your family now." Those words didn't just comfort an old woman. They destroyed everything a millionaire believed. Mildred spent 3 hours getting ready for that night. Her hands trembled as she zipped up the red velvet dress, the one she had bought 15 years ago for her oldest son's wedding and never worn since. She had to sit down on the edge of the bed twice just to catch her breath. 80 years weighed heavy on the body, but not on the heart that was beating fast with anticipation. Tonight would be different. Tonight her children would come. She looked at the mirror in the simple bedroom of the small apartment, where she had lived alone since Harold passed away a decade ago. The reflection showed a woman with carefully combed grey hair, brown eyes that still held a spark, and wrinkles that told stories of sacrifices none of her children would ever know. With trembling fingers, Mildred put on the pearl necklace Harold had given her on their 40th anniversary. Real pearls. He had saved money for 2 years in secret, working overtime, just to see her smile. "You look beautiful, Millie," he had said. "Beautiful as the day I met you." A tear escaped at the memory. Mildred wiped it away quickly. This was not a night to cry about the past. This was a night to celebrate with the family she had built. The taxi dropped her off at the Golden Oak restaurant at 7:45. The place was intimidating. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, pouring golden light over tables dressed in white tablecloths. Waiters moved like silent dancers carrying silver trays. Mildred smoothed her dress, suddenly aware that the velvet was worn at the sleeves. The maitre d' looked her up and down, and Mildred felt the weight of that gaze. A gaze that measured, calculated, judged. Reservation under Patterson. For 12 people. The table was decorated with white flowers and floating candles. In the center, a golden card read, "Happy 80th birthday, Grandma," in cursive letters. Mildred touched the card with her fingertips, feeling her eyes sting. They cared. Despite the distance of recent months, despite the phone calls that had become shorter and shorter, they cared. At 8 o'clock, she checked her phone. No messages. At 8:15, she called Raymond, her oldest. Voicemail. At 8:30, at the table next to hers, a family was celebrating a girl's birthday. The mother adjusted her daughter's hair while the father took photos. The grandparents smiled proudly. The girl blew out candles on a decorated cake, and everyone applauded. Mildred watched in silence, a sad smile on her lips. At 9 o'clock, a message finally arrived. Mildred opened it with trembling fingers. It was from Raymond. "Mom, can't make it. Important dinner came up with people from the firm. Business, you understand. Susan said she can't either. Problem with the kids. Junior's traveling, forgot to tell you. Catch you next time, so." Mildred read the message 3 times as if the words might change if she looked at them long enough. Business dinner. Problem with the kids. Traveling. She looked at the golden card on the table. "Happy 80th birthday, Grandma." Who had written that card? Which of her children had taken the trouble to order flowers, candles, decorations for a party none of them intended to attend? Mildred felt something break inside her chest. It wasn't a loud sound. It was a silent snap, like a dry branch stepped on in the forest when there's no one around to hear. "Poor thing," Mildred heard someone whisper behind her. "Must have been abandoned by her family. So sad. What's the point of living this long if it ends like this?" The words hit her like a slap. Was this the conclusion of her life? 80 years of sacrifice, of unconditional love, only to end up alone being the object of pity and whispers? A tear rolled down Mildred's face. She didn't try to hide it. She had no strength left to pretend. "Excuse me, Mum." It was the maitre d', professional smile in place. "We need the table for 10 o'clock. If you're not going to order for the full group, perhaps it would be better if—" The message was clear. She was taking up space. She was an inconvenience, an old woman alone at a table for 12. "I'll order something," Mildred said, her voice steady despite the tears. "The special of the day." The maitre d' signaled to a waiter, a signal that said keep an eye on her. That was when she saw them. At a diagonal table, a man of about 40 was dining with a small girl. But dining was an overstatement. He was on the phone, gesturing with irritation, completely ignoring the child. The man wore a grey suit that looked tailored by angels. Everything about him screamed money, power, importance. "I don't want excuses, Fernando," he said loudly. 500 layoffs by month's end. I'm not paying you to have a heart. I'm paying for results." But it was the girl who captured Mildred's attention. Blonde hair in a delicate braid, blue eyes that seemed to hold the sky, white dress with lace clearly uncomfortable. She was swinging her legs that didn't reach the floor, poking at her food. The girl looked just as lonely as Mildred. And then, as if sensing the gaze, the girl turned and met Mildred's eyes. There was a moment of silent recognition. Two lonely souls meeting in a crowded restaurant. The girl studied the red dress, the tears, the empty chairs, the birthday card, and did something no one expected. She got down from her chair. "Chloe, where are you going?" The father covered his phone, irritated. "Be right back, Daddy." But the girl was already crossing the space between the tables, completely ignoring the order. Determined little steps, eyes fixed on Mildred. "Why are you crying, Grandma?" The question, asked with the brutal sincerity of children, broke down Mildred's last defenses. "Where's your family?" Chloe continued, looking at the empty chairs. "Nobody came to your birthday. They had other commitments, sweetheart. But it's your birthday. It says right there, 80 years. That's really special." The father was approaching with long strides, his face tight with irritation. "Chloe, how many times have I told you not to bother strangers? Apologize to the lady and come back to the table right now." "But Daddy, she's all alone. Nobody came." "That's none of our business. Let's go." He grabbed his daughter's hand with more force than necessary, and Mildred saw Chloe wince. "You're hurting her," Mildred said before she could stop herself. Preston looked at the old woman as if she had just spit on his expensive suit. "Excuse me." "The girl's hand, you're squeezing too hard." Preston let go of Chloe. For a second, something like shame crossed his face, but it was quick, replaced by the mask of arrogance. "You should mind your own business. Doesn't look like you're doing a great job of it. Where's your family?" "Oh, right." Nobody showed up. Mildred felt each word like a knife going in slowly. She opened her mouth to respond, but what could she say? He was right. She was alone, old, and abandoned. The tears returned with full force. "Daddy!" Chloe's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Why did you make Grandma cry more? You were mean, really mean." Chloe pulled away, and before he could react, climbed onto the chair next to Mildred and hugged her. It was a child's hug. Clumsy, tight, full of arms too small trying to wrap around a body too big, the smell of innocence, the warmth of a little heart beating against a chest, tired from 8 decades. "Don't cry, Grandma," Chloe whispered. "Don't cry. I'm your family now. I came to your birthday. I came." And in that moment the entire restaurant stopped. Waiters froze. The pianist stopped playing. All eyes turned to the scene. A 6-year-old girl hugging an 80-year-old woman, offering the comfort an entire family had denied. Preston stood paralyzed, watching his daughter do what he had forgotten how to do, show compassion. And Mildred cried. Cried like she hadn't since burying Harold. Cried for all the years of loneliness, for all the unanswered calls, for all the grandchildren she barely knew. But now, finally, someone was hugging her. "Miss," Chloe said to a waitress passing by, "can you bring a piece of cake for my grandma? It's her birthday and she doesn't have a cake." The waitress, with tears in her eyes, nodded and ran to the kitchen. "Daddy!" Chloe then turned to Preston. "You're going to sit here with us. Grandma can't be alone on her birthday. You always say family is important, so sit down." Preston swallowed hard. He looked around, saw all the eyes fixed on him, saw the silent judgment, saw his 6-year-old daughter teaching him a lesson he should have learned long ago, and he saw Mildred, an 80-year-old woman in a worn red velvet dress, with an old pearl necklace, crying while hugging his daughter, as if that embrace was the only thing keeping her alive. Something moved inside Preston's chest. Something he had buried long ago, along with other things that hurt too much to remember. Slowly, as if each step cost a fortune, he pulled out a chair and sat down. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words came out scraping his throat. What I said was unforgivable. Mildred looked at him through her tears, and for a moment she saw beyond the expensive suit and the arrogance. She saw a lost man. A man who, just like her, carried pain he didn't know how to deal with. "What's your name, son?" she asked softly. "Preston. Preston Montgomery. And this princess who saved me. Chloe. Daughter from my first marriage." First marriage. Mildred filed away the information, sensing there was much more story behind those 2 words. "I'm Mildred. You can call me Millie. Everyone I love calls me that." Chloe broke into a huge smile. "Can I call you Grandma Millie?" And for the first time that night, Mildred laughed for real. "Yes, sweetheart, yes you can." The waitress returned with a slice of chocolate cake with a lit candle. The manager brought champagne, compliments of the house, and something extraordinary happened. One by one, people from the restaurant approached Mildred's table, forming a circle around her, and led by Chloe's little voice, everyone began to sing, "Happy birthday to you." Mildred looked around at all those strangers singing for her and felt something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. When she blew out the candle, Chloe asked, "What did you wish for, Grandma Millie?" Mildred looked at the girl, then at Preston, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "I wished to never feel alone again." And in that moment, looking into the blue eyes of a child who had crossed a restaurant to hug a stranger, Mildred knew her wish had already been granted. But the night was just beginning, and neither she nor Preston nor Chloe could imagine how much their lives were about to change. What Mildred didn't know was that Preston Montgomery wasn't just any millionaire. He was a man carrying a secret so heavy that it had turned him into the cold person everyone saw. A secret about his own mother. A secret that Chloe's innocent gesture had just begun to crack open. And at that very moment across the city, Mildred's granddaughter Taylor was discovering something about her father that would change everything. She had found the messages, she had found the lies, and she was about to make a decision that would bring this family's darkest truths into the light. The candle on the birthday cake had been blown out, but the fire was just starting to burn. The silence that settled over the table after everyone returned to their seats was unlike any silence Mildred had ever experienced. It wasn't awkward or heavy. It was a silence full of possibilities, like the pause between two notes of a song still being composed. Chloe had settled into the chair beside Mildred and was holding the old woman's wrinkled hand as if it were a precious treasure. Preston sat on the other side, his phone abandoned on the table for the first time all night, his eyes fixed on some point between the present and memories he struggled to keep buried. "Grandma Millie," Chloe broke the silence with her crystal voice. "Why didn't your children come? Don't they like you?" The question was a knife without a handle. It cut whoever answered and whoever asked. Mildred breathed deeply, feeling the weight of decades of dedication being questioned by a 6-year-old. "I believe they do like me, sweetheart. Sometimes people get so busy with their own lives that they forget what really matters. But you're their mom. Mom is the most important thing in the world." Preston shifted in his chair, visibly uncomfortable. Mildred noticed his jaw had tightened, his knuckles white from gripping the napkin. "Not everyone thinks that way, princess," he murmured. "You do, Daddy. You always talk about Grandma Celeste." The name fell on the table like a bomb. Preston closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, there was something different in them, something broken. "Who is Celeste?" Mildred asked gently, sensing she had touched a deep wound. Preston didn't answer immediately. He looked at his daughter, then at the restaurant ceiling, as if searching for strength somewhere beyond this world. "My mother," he finally said. "She passed away 2 years ago." Mildred felt her heart tighten. There it was, the pain behind the arrogance, the wound behind the coldness. "I'm so sorry, son." "Grandma Celeste was really nice," Chloe said, her eyes bright with memory. "She made chocolate cake for me and let me lick the spoon. Daddy would get mad, but she said grandmas exist to spoil grandchildren." A sad smile crossed Preston's face. "She did say that. What was she like?" Mildred asked, genuinely interested. Preston was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, lower, more human. "She was a simple woman, never had much money, raised me and my 2 brothers alone after my father abandoned us. She worked as a seamstress, spent nights at the sewing machine to keep up with orders." Mildred nodded, recognizing the story. How many mothers had she known who had done the same? How many women had sacrificed sleep, health, their own dreams for their children? She must have been a very strong woman. She was, but I didn't know how to appreciate that while she was alive. The confession came loaded with guilt. Chloe looked at her father with curiosity, not fully understanding the weight of those words. "What do you mean?" Mildred asked. Preston ran his hand over his face, a gesture of exhaustion that revealed more than any words. "When I started making money, I thought I could compensate for all those years of hardship by giving her things. I bought her a new apartment, a car, expensive clothes. But what she really wanted—" He stopped, his voice choked. "What she wanted was time," Mildred completed, because she knew that story. It was her own story seen from another angle. "Yes, she called me every week asking me to visit. I always had an excuse. An important meeting, a business trip, an unavoidable commitment. I thought she understood that I was building an empire to make her proud. And she didn't understand? She understood too well. The last time we talked, she said something I'll never forget. Mildred waited, sensing this moment was crucial. She said, "My son, you're so busy building a castle that you forgot lonely kings are the most unhappy. What good is all the gold in the world if you have no one to share it with?" The words echoed in the space between them. Chloe had stopped swinging her legs as if feeling the gravity of the moment, even without fully comprehending it. "Your mother was very wise," Mildred said. "She was, and I was too foolish to listen." "Daddy," Chloe tugged at his suit sleeve, "you're not foolish. You're smart. Everyone says you're the smartest man." Preston looked at his daughter with a tenderness that seemed to hurt. "Intelligence isn't the same as wisdom, Princess. Your father knows how to make money, but he forgot how to do the things that really matter." Mildred observed the interaction between father and daughter, and something began to form in her mind, an understanding that went beyond words. "What happened to Chloe's mother?" she asked, knowing she was entering delicate territory. Preston's face closed for an instant, but then relaxed, as if he had decided he had already revealed too much to stop now. "Jennifer, we met in college. She was the happiest woman I had ever known. Laughed at everything, saw beauty in everything, believed the world was a good place. And what happened?" "I happened," Preston said bitterly. "When we started dating, I was different. Had dreams, had time, had the capacity to love. But as I rose in the company, I changed, became obsessed with success, money, power." Chloe had rested her head on Mildred's arm, her eyes starting to grow heavy with sleep, but still attentive to the conversation. "Jennifer held on for years, endured the nights I came home too late, endured the weekends I worked instead of being with the family, the broken promises, forgotten birthdays, cancelled vacations." Mildred felt each word as if it were about her own children. Was this what they felt toward her? Was this how they justified their absence? "When Chloe was born, I thought things would change, and they did for a while. I was present, I was happy, I was complete. But then came a crisis at the company, and I went back to being someone I didn't like. Worse, actually. Monster is a strong word." "It's the right word," Preston insisted. "Jennifer asked for a divorce when Chloe was 3, said she'd rather raise our daughter alone than next to a ghost who only showed up to sleep. And you agreed." "I fought it. Not out of love, out of pride." Preston Montgomery couldn't be abandoned by his wife. The brutal honesty was almost painful to hear, but she left anyway. She did, and took Chloe with her. I got shared custody after months of legal battle. Now Chloe stays with me on alternate weekends and some nights during the week. And her mother, where is she now? She remarried, a music teacher who makes in a year what I make in a week. And you know what hurts most? Mildred waited. She's happy, genuinely happy, and Chloe loves her stepfather. He has time for her. He plays, he laughs, he's present. "Daddy," Chloe said sleepily, "I like Uncle Marcus, but you're my dad. I love you." Preston hugged his daughter tightly, burying his face in her blonde hair. Mildred saw his shoulders tremble and realized he was crying. Silently, not wanting his daughter to notice, but crying. "I love you too, Princess," he whispered, "more than anything in this world." Mildred felt her own tears return, but these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition, of understanding. She reached out and touched Preston's arm gently. "You know, son, your mother would be very proud of you right now." Preston raised his eyes, confused. "Proud? I just confessed I'm a failure as a father and as a human being. You just confessed you're human. That's very different from being a failure." "I don't understand." Mildred smiled, the smile of someone who has seen much of life. "Failures don't recognize their mistakes. Failures don't cry while hugging their children. Failures don't apologize to unknown old women in restaurants." Preston remained silent, processing the words. "You're in pain, Preston. A lot of pain. Your mother's death, the divorce, the guilt of not being the father you wanted to be. All that pain made you build armor. And armor protects, but it also isolates. How do you know all this? Because I raised 3 children who built the same armor. 3 children who today can't look me in the eye, because they know they've failed me. And guilt is easier to bear from a distance." The revelation made Preston straighten in his chair. "You think they feel guilty?" "I'm certain. Raymond sent me a message saying something came up. Do you think he's at peace right now, knowing his mother spent her 80th birthday alone?" Preston thought of his own ghosts, the nights he woke up sweating, remembering his mother's unanswered calls. "No, he won't be." "Exactly. But guilt is cowardly, Preston. It prefers to hide rather than face things. My children will spend weeks avoiding calling me because they're ashamed, and the more time passes, the harder it will be to reconnect. How do you break that cycle? Mildred looked at Chloe, who had finally fallen asleep, with her head resting on her arm. With courage, with honesty, with gestures that show love still exists, even when words fail. She stroked the sleeping girl's blonde hair. This child crossed an entire restaurant to hug a crying stranger. She didn't think about consequences, didn't calculate risks, didn't worry about what others would think. She simply saw someone suffering and decided to help. Preston looked at his daughter with new eyes. When did we lose that ability? Mildred continued. When did we start calculating the cost of every act of kindness? When did we stop crossing restaurants to hug those who need it? I don't know, Preston admitted, but I think I lost that a long time ago. You didn't lose it. It's just hidden under layers of fear and pain. Your daughter just proved that. How so? Chloe didn't learn compassion alone, Preston. Someone taught her. And if it wasn't you or her mother, it was your mother. It was Celeste. Through you, even when you thought you weren't paying attention. Preston was silent for a long moment, digesting the words. My mother always said the love we give isn't lost. It multiplies, passes from generation to generation, finds paths we can't see. She was right. Look at your daughter. She's living proof that your mother existed, that she loved, that her love is still alive in this world. For the second time that night, Preston's eyes filled with tears, but this time he didn't try to hide them. Mildred, can I ask you something? Of course, son. Will you forgive me for what I said before, about your family not coming? Mildred smiled and reached out, holding his hand firmly. Already forgiven, Preston. The moment you sat in that chair and decided to be human instead of being important. The waiter approached discreetly, informing them the restaurant was about to close. Preston looked around and realized they were practically the only customers left. Mildred, he said, making a decision, do you have a way to get home? I'll call a taxi. Absolutely not. I'll drive you. It's the least I can do. You don't have to, son. You've already done so much for me tonight. You've done much more for me, more than you can imagine. Mildred looked at Preston, at Chloe sleeping, at the table that should have had 12 people and ended up with 3. And for the first time since receiving that cruel message from her son, she felt that maybe, just maybe, the night hadn't been a disaster. Maybe it had been exactly what needed to happen. At that very moment across the city, Taylor Patterson was sitting on her bed, hands trembling as she scrolled through her father's email on the tablet he had carelessly left unlocked. What she found made her stomach turn. Emails to a real estate agent about her grandmother's house, appraisals, potential buyers, projected sale prices, all dated from months ago. All while her grandmother was still very much alive. And then she found the group chat with her Aunt Susan. Mom's being difficult about the house again. She's selfish. Always has been. Once she's gone, we split everything 3 ways. Junior gets nothing for taking her side. Agreed, he made his choice. Taylor felt sick. These were her father's words, her aunt's words. Talking about her grandmother like she was an obstacle to be removed. She took screenshots of everything and made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, she would find her grandmother. Tomorrow, she would tell her the truth. Tomorrow, she would choose which side of her family she wanted to belong to. The night was far from over, and the secrets that had been buried for so long were finally clawing their way to the surface. Preston's car glided through the streets, crossing neighborhoods that grew simpler as they moved away from downtown. Chloe slept in the back seat, her breathing light like someone dreaming of good things. Mildred watched the city through the window, the streetlights creating a hypnotic rhythm. It had been a long time since she had ridden in such a comfortable car. Do you live far? Preston asked. Maple Grove. Do you know it? Preston nodded. Simple houses, tree-lined streets, the kind of neighborhood where neighbors still greeted each other by name. Do you live alone? Since Harold passed, yes. My children wanted to put me in a nursing home, said it would be safer, but I refused. Why? Mildred smiled, touching the window with her fingertips. Because that house is all I have left of him. Every room holds a memory. The kitchen where he drank coffee before work, the porch where we watched sunsets, the bedroom where we raised our children. Preston felt a tightness in his chest. He had a luxury penthouse decorated by a famous designer and couldn't remember a single happy memory created there. I understand, he said, though he wasn't sure he really did. No, son, I don't think you understand yet, but one day you will. They continued in silence until the GPS announced arrival. Preston parked in front of a small house with a well-kept garden and a porch with rocking chairs. This is it, Mildred said, but made no move to get out. Is something wrong? It's just that it's been so long since I came home and found someone waiting. The silence will hurt. Preston turned off the engine. What if we came inside with you? Chloe's asleep anyway, I can carry her. Mildred looked at him with surprise. You would do that? Mildred, you've given me more in 2 hours than most people have given me in years. Coming inside your house is the least I can do. She felt her eyes sting again, but this time she held back the tears. She had cried enough for one night. Then let's go. Preston picked up Chloe carefully with surprising gentleness for a man with large hands and rough gestures. The girl nestled against his chest without waking, her little arms hanging relaxed. Mildred opened the gate, then the front door, and turned on the living room light. The room was exactly as Preston had imagined. Old but well-preserved furniture, photographs everywhere, a bookshelf full of trinkets accumulated over decades. The smell was of a lived-in home, of settled love. You can put her on the couch, Mildred indicated. While she got a blanket, Preston laid Chloe gently on the flowered couch and began observing the photographs on the wall. Dozens of them, organized with evident care. Young Mildred in a wedding dress beside Harold. 3 children in school uniforms. Graduations, weddings, baptisms. An entire timeline in frozen images. That's Raymond, Mildred said, returning with the blanket, pointing to a man in a suit. My oldest. A lawyer, very successful, as he likes to remind everyone. This is Susan, a woman with dyed hair beside a well-dressed man. Married a doctor, has 2 daughters. And this one. Mildred paused before a smaller photo. A younger man, unshaven, eyes holding an old sadness. Junior, my youngest, the one who worries me most. Why? Because he's the only one who still has a heart. And in this family, heart became synonymous with weakness. Preston frowned, intrigued. What do you mean? Mildred sighed and indicated for him to sit in an armchair while she settled into another, facing the couch where Chloe slept. When Harold died, he left the house and a small savings. Raymond and Susan immediately suggested I sell and divide the money, said it would be more practical. And you? I said no. This house is not for sale, not while I'm alive. How did they react? Raymond said I was being selfish. Susan agreed, said the money would help pay for her daughter's private school. Preston felt anger growing. He knew people like that, had been one. And Junior? Junior took my side, fought hard with his siblings over me. After that, Raymond and Susan practically excluded him from the family for defending his own mother, Mildred confirmed. And Junior is the only one who still calls every week, the only one who shows up on Mother's Day. The only one who remembers his mother exists beyond being an inconvenience. But he didn't come tonight. Mildred lowered her eyes. Junior works on an oil rig out at sea, spends weeks away from home. He called last night to wish me an early happy birthday, said he was devastated he couldn't be there in person. So Raymond's message lied about him forgetting. Raymond lies about many things, Mildred said with a weariness that seemed to have accumulated over years. Lies to others, lies to himself. I think from lying so much he forgot what truth looks like. Preston processed this, recognizing patterns from his own life. And the restaurant reservation? Who made it? Mildred smiled bitterly. It was Taylor, my oldest granddaughter, Raymond's daughter. She's 17 and the only grandchild who still cares about her grandmother. She called last week all excited, said she had convinced her father to organize a surprise party for me. So it was a surprise to her too, that nobody showed up? It was. Taylor messaged me a little while ago. She was desperate, apologizing, saying her father promised everyone would come, that she didn't know it was a lie. Preston felt his stomach turn. The father used his own daughter to set up a farce? Raymond doesn't see it that way. For him it was just a plan that didn't work out. Things happen. Business is more important. Mom will understand. But you didn't understand. No, not this time. The silence that followed was interrupted only by Chloe's soft breathing on the couch. The sound of a car pulling up made them both turn toward the window. It was barely 6 in the morning, the first light of dawn painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Mildred frowned. Who would come at this hour? The doorbell rang urgently, then again, and again. Preston stood up instinctively, positioning himself protectively. Mildred walked to the door and opened it. Taylor stood on the porch, tears streaming down her face, a backpack over her shoulder, and a tablet clutched to her chest. "Grandma!" The teenager threw herself into Mildred's arms with a force that almost knocked the old woman down. She sobbed uncontrollably, her whole body shaking. "Sweetheart, what happened? How did you get here?" "I ran away, Grandma. Snuck out, took 3 buses. I couldn't stay there anymore, knowing what Dad did to you." Mildred led her granddaughter inside, closing the door carefully. They sat on the couch, Taylor still clinging to her grandmother, as if afraid she might disappear. "Calm down, dear. Breathe. Tell me what happened." Taylor wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took several deep breaths, and began to speak. Each word came loaded with a pain that seemed too big for a teenager to carry. "When I found out nobody went to your birthday, I confronted my dad. Asked why he lied, why he used me to make the reservation if he never intended to go. And what did he say? Said something came up. That business is like that. That you would understand because mothers always understand." Mildred felt her chest tighten. Mothers always understand. Was that how Raymond saw her love? As a blank check to disappoint without consequences? "And then I yelled at him, Grandma. Yelled a lot. Said he was a coward, that I was ashamed to be his daughter, that you deserved so much better than what he gave you." "Taylor, and you know what he did." The girl's eyes filled with tears again. "He laughed in my face and said I was dramatic just like you, that one day I'd grow up and understand that family is just a social obligation, not a priority." The words hit Mildred like stones. Social obligation. Was that what she represented to her own son? Decades of sacrifice reduced to an inconvenience to be managed? "My son said that?" "He did, Grandma. And there's more. So much more." Taylor opened the tablet with trembling hands, showing the screenshots she had taken. "I found these on his email, and in the family group chat with Aunt Susan." Mildred looked at the screen with trembling hands. Emails to a real estate agent about her house. Appraisals, potential buyers, projected prices, all dated months ago. All while she was still very much alive, still cooking in her kitchen, still sleeping in her bed, still believing her children loved her. And then the messages. "Mom's being difficult about the house again. She's selfish. Always has been. Never thinks about anyone but herself. Once she's gone, we split everything 3 ways. Junior gets nothing for taking her side." Agreed. He made his choice. Let him deal with the consequences. The floor seemed to disappear from under Mildred's feet. She looked around at the walls that held so many memories, at the furniture Harold had chosen with such care, at the photographs that told the story of an entire life. Her children were waiting for her to die so they could erase all of it. "He's waiting for me to pass to sell my house?" Taylor nodded, crying. "I didn't want to tell you, Grandma, but you need to know the truth. You need to know who my father really became." Mildred remained silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was strangely calm. "I always knew who your father is, dear. I raised him, watched him grow, watched the choices he made, watched the man he became. I just chose to believe that deep down, very deep down, there was still the boy who used to run to hug me when he came home from school. And now I know that boy got lost somewhere along the way, and I don't know if he wants to be found." Preston, who had been observing everything from the corner of the room, approached carefully. "Is this the man from the restaurant?" Taylor asked, noticing him for the first time. "Yes, Preston, and his daughter Chloe. They came to spend the day with us." Taylor seemed surprised. "You invited strangers to your house?" Mildred smiled, opening the door to receive more light from the rising sun. "Dear, sometimes strangers treat us better than our own family." Chloe stirred on the couch, awakened by the voices. When she saw Taylor, her eyes lit up. "Grandma Millie, you have another granddaughter?" Mildred looked at Taylor, then at Chloe, then at Preston. 3 people who, hours ago, were complete strangers, and now felt more like family than the children she had raised. "It seems I do, sweetheart, it seems I do." Taylor wiped her tears and looked at her grandmother with a maturity beyond her 17 years. "I'm not going back there, Grandma. I want to stay here with you." Mildred looked at Preston over her granddaughter's head. He nodded slightly. "You won't go back," Mildred promised. "Not while I'm alive. This house is yours too." And there, in that living room filled with memories and photographs of an entire life, a new family began to form. Not of blood, but of choice. Not of obligation, but of love. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting everything in gold. Chloe had climbed onto the couch next to Taylor, and the teenager was showing her pictures on her phone, both of them giggling despite everything. Preston caught Mildred's eye and smiled. A real smile. The first one she had seen from him that wasn't hiding pain. But Mildred knew this was just the beginning. Raymond wouldn't accept losing his daughter without a fight, and when he discovered the screenshots Taylor had taken, war would be declared. She looked at the morning sun and took a deep breath. 80 years old. She had thought her battles were over, but it seemed life still had one more fight in store for her, and this time she wouldn't face it alone. The morning passed in a way Mildred had forgotten was possible. The house, usually so silent, filled with voices, laughter, and life, the sound of music from Taylor's phone, the clatter of dishes being washed by 4 hands, the giggles shared during old soap operas they watched together on the couch. Preston and Chloe appeared almost every hour with something new, sometimes food, sometimes flowers, but always something much more valuable: company. The blue-eyed girl had officially adopted Mildred as her grandmother, and no one had the heart to say they weren't really family. Around noon, while Taylor was studying for her school exams and Mildred was preparing an orange cake in the kitchen, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Mum?" Mildred's heart stopped for a second. That voice she knew better than her own breathing. "Junior, son? It's me, Mum. Just got off the rig. I'm at the airport. Can I come over?" Mildred felt her legs weaken. She had to lean on the kitchen counter to keep from falling. "You can, son. Of course you can. This house will always be yours." When she hung up, tears were already streaming down her wrinkled face. Taylor appeared at the kitchen door, worried. "Grandma, what happened? Who was that?" "Your Uncle Junior. He's coming home." Taylor's eyes widened. She knew her uncle only through stories and old photographs. The uncle who had been expelled from the family for defending their grandmother. The uncle her father treated as if he didn't exist. "Does he know I'm here?" "I don't know, dear, but it doesn't matter. Family is family." An hour later, a taxi stopped in front of the gate. Mildred was on the porch, her heart beating so hard it seemed to want to escape her chest. When she saw the man getting out of the car, tears returned with full force. Junior was thinner than she remembered, unshaven, eyes tired from weeks at sea. But the smile, that gentle smile she had known since he was a baby, remained exactly the same. "Mum!" He ran to the porch and hugged her with the strength of someone holding back longing for too long. Mildred smelled salt and work on her son, and never had a scent seemed so sweet. "My boy, my boy." "I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry I couldn't be at your birthday. I tried to switch shifts, but they wouldn't let me. And I was so worried when you didn't answer my calls the next day." "I was fine, son. Better than you can imagine." Junior pulled back slightly, looking at his mother with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "Raymond texted me saying the party was a success, that everyone went." The expression on Mildred's face said everything words didn't need to say. "He lied, didn't he?" Junior asked, his voice hardening. "Nobody went. Nobody from the family. But other people did. People who treated me better than my own children." "Mum, I'm going to—" "You're not going to do anything," Mildred interrupted firmly. "I don't want any more fights. We've had enough fights for a lifetime." That was when Junior noticed Taylor standing at the door, watching the scene with watery eyes. "Taylor, what are you doing here?" The teenager took a step forward, hesitant. "I live here now, Uncle. With Grandma." Junior looked from one to the other, clearly confused. "What do you mean you live here? What about your father?" "My father—" Taylor swallowed hard. "My father isn't the person I thought he was." Mildred led both of them inside, and over the next hour told the whole story to Junior. The restaurant, the empty chairs, the cruel message, Chloe crossing the room to hug a stranger, Preston and his transformation, the confrontation that was yet to come. When she finished, Junior sat in silence, his fists clenched on his knees. "I always knew Raymond was selfish, but this is pure cruelty. It's pain, son. Pain he doesn't know how to deal with. Pain that turned into coldness because it was easier than facing it." "You still defend him?" Mildred sighed, touching her youngest son's face with affection. "I don't defend what he did, but I still love the boy he was. I still hope that one day he'll find his way back. And if he never does, then I'll love from afar, because that's what mothers do, Junior. Love even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when the whole world says to give up." The sound of a car screeching made everyone turn toward the window. Raymond Patterson stepped out of his Mercedes like a storm, face red with rage, eyes flashing. Behind him came Susan with a look of disapproval. Her husband followed silently. "Taylor, get in the car now." The teenager shrank back, but didn't move. Mildred positioned herself between her granddaughter and her son, her fragile 80-year-old body raised with a dignity that needed no height. "Raymond, you will not yell in my house." "Your house?" He laughed with scorn. "This house should have been sold years ago. You're too stubborn to accept that you don't need this much space anymore." "Space for what? To receive visitors who never come?" The blow landed squarely. Raymond faltered for a second before recovering his composure. "I didn't come here to argue. I came to get my daughter who ran away from home to meddle in your dramatic life." "Dramatic?" Mildred took a step forward. "You think it's dramatic for a mother to want to see her children on her 80th birthday? You think it's dramatic to wait 2 hours at a restaurant looking at 11 empty chairs?" "Mom, I already explained. Things came up." "Lies." Mildred's voice cut through the air like never before. "You had no commitments, Raymond. You simply didn't want to come. And worse, you used your own daughter to set up a cruel farce." Susan tried to intervene. "Mom, you're exaggerating. It was just a dinner. It was my 80th birthday, Susan." 80. How many more do you think I'll have?" The silence that followed was cutting. Even Chloe had stopped playing, watching the scene with wide eyes. Preston approached discreetly, positioning himself beside Mildred as silent support. "And who is this?" Raymond asked, noticing the man for the first time. "Another one of your charity projects, Mum, picking up people off the street now." "This," Mildred said with a firm voice, "is Preston Montgomery. He and his daughter were the only ones who kept me company that night, while you were all too busy being important." Raymond's eyes widened at recognizing the name. "Preston Montgomery, the Preston Montgomery from Montgomery Holdings." Preston nodded, showing no emotion. "Wait." Raymond completely changed his tone, arrogance giving way to a forced smile. "Mr. Montgomery, what an honor. I've followed your company's work for years. Actually, my law firm has been trying to contact your legal team to—" "I'm not interested." Preston cut him off sharply. "Excuse me? I'm not interested in doing business with someone who abandons his own mother on her birthday. Personal character and professional character don't separate, Mr. Patterson. If you betray the one who gave you life, what guarantees me you wouldn't betray a business partner?" Raymond's face went through several shades of red. "You don't know anything about my family. You have no right to judge." "I was there," Preston responded calmly. "I saw your mother crying alone at a table decorated for a party none of you ever intended to give. I saw my 6-year-old daughter have more compassion than Mildred's 3 adult children combined." "Dad," Taylor spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. "Mr. Montgomery is right. What you did was horrible, and I'm ashamed." "Taylor, shut up and get in the car." "No." The simple word carried enormous weight. Raymond looked at his daughter as if he didn't recognize her. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not getting in the car. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here with Grandma, who needs me much more than you do." Susan finally lost her patience. "Taylor, you're being ridiculous. Your grandmother has lived 80 years without needing a babysitter. Stop being dramatic and let's go." "Dramatic?" Taylor turned to her aunt with fire in her eyes. "You're talking about drama. You who can't go a week without posting pictures of your daughters at their expensive school to show how successful you are. You who skipped Grandma's graduation party for a spa retreat." Susan went pale. "That was years ago, and I sent a gift." "A gift?" Junior stepped forward, speaking for the first time. "You sent a card with $100 inside. $100 for the woman who sold her own jewelry to pay for your husband's medical school." The revelation fell like a bomb. Susan's husband, who had remained silent until then, looked at his mother-in-law with a stunned expression. "You sold your jewelry for me." "Times were hard," Mildred said simply. "You needed it. I could help." "Mom, why did you never tell us?" Susan asked, her voice suddenly small. "Because mothers don't help expecting recognition, Susan. Mothers help because they love, simple as that." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It was a silence of shame, of late recognition of truths that could no longer be ignored. Raymond was the first to break it. "This changes nothing. Taylor, you have 5 minutes to get in that car, or there will be serious consequences." "What consequences, Dad? Are you going to disown me? Kick me out of the house? Do to me what you did to Uncle Junior?" The younger brother's name hit Raymond like a punch. "Don't bring your uncle into this." "Why not?" "Because he was the only one who had the courage to defend Grandma. Because he chose to be honest instead of convenient? Junior is a failure who works on an oil rig when he could be... Could be what, Raymond? Mildred interrupted. Stealing from his own mother? Waiting for her to die to sell the house where she raised you? The silence was deafening. That's right, Mildred continued. Taylor told me. You already have a buyer for this house. You're just waiting for me to close my eyes forever. Raymond looked at his daughter with fury. You had no right. I had every right, Taylor shouted. Grandma deserves to know what kind of person her son has become. Someone waiting for the right moment to take advantage. Preston took a step forward, his imposing presence making Raymond instinctively retreat. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to politely ask you to leave your mother's property. Now. You don't give orders here. No, but I can call my lawyer to make sure everyone stays respectful and within the law. Raymond looked around, realizing he had lost. Susan was already walking toward the car, clearly wanting to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. This isn't over, he said, pointing at Taylor. We'll have a serious conversation when you come back home. I'm not coming back, Taylor responded. I'm going to stay with Grandma, and if you try to force me, I'll tell everyone what you did. Your clients, your partners, everyone. Raymond opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Defeated, he turned and marched toward the car. Before getting in, however, he stopped and looked at Mildred one last time. For a second, just 1 second, she saw something in his eyes that looked like regret, but it was quick, replaced by the usual mask. The car sped away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a silence that weighed tons. Taylor collapsed into her grandmother's arms, crying. Mildred hugged her with all the strength her 80 years allowed. You were very brave, my dear, very brave. I don't want to go back there, Grandma. Please don't send me back. Mildred looked at Preston over her granddaughter's head. He nodded slightly. You won't go back, Mildred promised. Not while I live. This house is yours too. Junior approached, his eyes also wet. Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for everything. For all the years I wasn't around enough. Mildred extended her hand, holding her son's. You were always around, Junior, in every weekly call, in every Mother's Day flower, in every time you chose to be honest instead of convenient. You were the only one who never really left. And there, in that yard where so many memories had been made, a new chapter began. Not of endings, but of new beginnings. Not of broken families, but of families that choose to rebuild. Mildred looked at the afternoon sun beginning its descent and smiled. 80 years. She had thought she knew everything about life, but life was showing her that there was still much to learn. About love, about forgiveness, about the families we choose. And sometimes, the families we choose are the ones that truly save us. The weeks that followed the confrontation were ones of silent reconstruction. Taylor had settled into Junior's old room, and Mildred's house regained the scent of life it had lost so long ago. Music from Taylor's phone, dishes being washed together, laughter shared during old movies on the couch. Preston and Chloe appeared almost every weekend, always bringing something valuable. Presents. The blue-eyed girl had adopted Mildred as her official grandmother, and no one had the courage to say they weren't real family. Junior had taken a leave from the oil rig to reconnect with his mother. Every morning, they sat on the porch watching the sunrise in comfortable silence. On a Thursday afternoon, while Taylor was studying and Mildred was teaching Chloe how to make her famous orange cake, the doorbell rang. Mildred wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the door. When she opened it, her heart stopped. Raymond stood on the porch, but he was different. The arrogance was gone. The expensive suit had been replaced by simple clothes. His eyes, which had always looked at the world from above, now stared at the ground. He looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of his choices had physically diminished him. Mom. The word came out hoarse, broken. Mildred noticed his hands were trembling, clutching a small envelope. Raymond, can I come in? I need to talk to you. Please. Mildred looked at her oldest son, at that man she had raised, nursed through fevers, taught to ride a bicycle, and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Fear. The little boy who used to run to her when he was scared of thunder. Come in. Junior appeared at the living room door, his body tense, ready to intervene. Mildred raised her hand, signaling for him to wait. Let's talk on the porch. Just the two of us. They sat in the rocking chairs where Mildred and Harold had spent so many evenings watching the sunset. The silence stretched for long minutes until Raymond finally found the courage to speak. I cancelled the sale. Mildred looked at him, waiting. The house. I called the real estate agent the day after the confrontation, told him to cancel everything. This house is yours, Mom. For as long as you live. I should never have... His voice broke. Raymond covered his face with his hands, and Mildred saw something she hadn't seen since he was a child. Her son was crying. I don't know what happened to me, Mom. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. I see Dad. I see everything I swore I would never be. Your father. Raymond raised his eyes, red and swollen. He was cold, distant. Only cared about work and money. I hated him for that, and I swore I would be different. He laughed bitterly. Look at me now. I became exactly what I hated. The words were brutal in their honesty. Mildred felt each one, but she didn't interrupt. Her son needed to say this, needed to release everything he had been carrying. When Taylor showed you those messages, when I saw your face, something broke inside me, Mom. Something that was already cracked for a long time, but I kept ignoring. What broke, son? The lie I told myself, that I was doing this for the family, that you would understand, that money mattered more than you. He shook his head. Nothing matters more than you, Mom. Nothing. And it took me losing my daughter, losing my brother, losing your respect, to finally see that. Mildred extended her hand and held her son's, those hands that she had held when teaching him to walk, those hands that she had kissed when he scraped his knee, those hands that had written messages planning to sell her house. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Raymond continued. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for a chance to be the son I should have been all along. And Susan. Raymond swallowed hard. Susan is dealing with her own demons. When she found out what you did for her husband, it destroyed her. She always thought she had earned everything she had through merit, discovering that none of it would have been possible without your sacrifice. What did she say? She hasn't left her room for 3 days. Her husband and I have been taking turns taking care of the girls. He paused. She wrote you a letter, asked me to give it to you. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Mildred took it, but didn't open it. I'll read it later. They sat in silence for a while longer, watching birds fly across the afternoon sky. Do you remember, Mildred said softly, when you were 7 and got lost at the fair? Raymond nodded, a sad smile on his lips. I was terrified. I searched for 3 hours, found you by the carousel crying on the floor, and you said, Mommy, I knew you would come, you always come. Mildred squeezed her son's hand. I always come, Raymond, no matter how lost you are. A mother always comes for her children. The question is, are you ready to come home too? Raymond finally looked into his mother's eyes, and for the first time in decades, Mildred saw her little boy, the one who used to bring her dandelions from the yard, the one who used to fall asleep on her lap during storms, the one who used to say he would take care of her forever. I want to come home, Mom. I want to come home so badly. Mildred opened her arms, and Raymond, the successful lawyer, the cold businessman, the son who had planned to sell his mother's house, threw himself into those arms like a lost child, finally finding shelter. They stayed like that for a long time. Mother and son, tears and silence, forgiveness that didn't need words. When they finally separated, Junior was standing at the door, eyes wet. Junior, Raymond said, standing up, I'm sorry. For all the years I treated you as if you didn't exist. For every time I called you a failure, when you were the only success among us, the only one who stayed true. Junior remained silent, then slowly uncrossed his arms. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. Raymond nodded. I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Junior extended his hand. Raymond took it. Not a hug yet, but a beginning. Taylor appeared at the door. Dad? Raymond turned to his daughter. Taylor, I'm sorry. I understand if you never want to come back home, but wherever you are, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be a father you can be proud of. Taylor walked slowly to her father and hugged him. I'm not ready to come back yet, she whispered, but maybe we can start having lunch together, once a week, here at Grandma's. I would love that more than anything. Preston appeared at the gate with Chloe on his shoulders. The girl was waving excitedly. Grandma Millie, we brought ice cream. The scene was almost comical. The millionaire with a child on his shoulders, an ice cream cooler in one hand, walking into a moment of family reconciliation he knew nothing about. Am I interrupting something? Preston asked, noticing the tear-streaked faces. Not at all, Mildred said, smiling. You're right on time. That night, Mildred's table needed an extension to fit everyone. Raymond had called Susan, who had finally left her room after 3 days. She arrived with swollen eyes and a trembling body, and before saying anything, hugged her mother for 5 full minutes without letting go. "I'm sorry, Mum," she whispered, "for everything. For all the years I only thought of myself, for every time I took you for granted." "I know, dear. I know." Susan's husband approached Mildred after dinner, when the others were distracted with conversation. He held her hands gently. "I never thanked you properly for what you did all those years ago. Without your sacrifice, I wouldn't be a doctor. My daughters wouldn't exist. This entire life I have I owe to you, and I spent years not knowing, not appreciating, not even asking." Mildred patted his hand warmly. "Now you know, and now you can pass it forward. That's how love works, son. We receive, we give, and the cycle continues. That's all any of us can do." Chloe had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from playing with Susan's daughters. Taylor and Junior were doing the dishes together, talking quietly about the years lost and the years still ahead. Raymond and Preston were in the yard, having a conversation that seemed serious but not hostile. Mildred observed it all from the kitchen door, her heart overflowing with gratitude. 80 years, an entire life of struggles, losses, joys, and sorrows. And the greatest lesson she had learned was the simplest of all. The love we give is never lost. It travels, transforms, sometimes hides for years, but always, always finds its way back. She opened Susan's letter and read it in silence. "Mum, I don't have words for what I did. I don't have excuses. I only have shame and the hope that one day, somehow, I can be half the woman you are. You gave everything for us. Everything. And we gave you empty chairs on your birthday. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I want you to know that from today on, I will try every day to be worthy of being called your daughter. With all my love and all my regret, Susan." Mildred folded the letter and placed it in her apron pocket, next to her heart. Preston approached quietly. "How are you feeling, Mildred?" She smiled, the smile of someone who has finally found peace. "Complete. For the first time in many years, I feel complete. My mother would have loved to meet you. You remind me so much of her. Maybe that's why Chloe crossed that restaurant. Maybe your mother sent her." Preston laughed softly. Maybe she did. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the family they had both found in the most unexpected way. "You know what I learned this week?" Preston said. "What?" "That families aren't just made of blood. They're made of choices, of people who decide to stay when everything tells them to leave, of strangers who cross restaurants to hug those who need it." Mildred nodded. "The families we choose are often the ones that save us." "Exactly." Chloe stirred on the couch and opened her sleepy eyes. "Grandma Millie, is the party over?" Mildred walked to the couch and stroked the girl's blonde hair. "No, sweetheart. The party is just beginning." And it was true, because at that moment, in that house full of memories and photographs of an entire life, Mildred knew that all the pain, all the loneliness, all the empty chairs on her birthday had led to this. A full table, a family reunited, a new beginning. She looked out the window at the stars beginning to appear and whispered to the sky, "Thank you, Harold. Thank you for giving me the strength to wait. Thank you for never letting me give up." A gentle breeze touched her face and Mildred smiled. Somewhere she knew he was listening. 80 years old, a lifetime of lessons, and the most important one of all, love never gives up. Not on us, and we should never give up on it. Because sometimes the worst night of our lives is just preparing the ground for the best days we will ever have. And sometimes all it takes to change everything is a 6-year-old girl with blue eyes who isn't afraid to cross a restaurant to hug someone who needs it. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to rebuild, to forgive, and to choose the family that truly loves us.